This is Sam Rivers' last moment. Not the loud kind that shakes a stadium, but the quiet one that slips in between the lights and the echo of a bass line you can still feel in your chest. News ripples across feeds before breakfast, and for a second the world seems to lean back, listening for that low, warm thrum that held a whole era together. Sam wasn't the front man, he never chased the spotlight, but he was the backbone, the calm in the chaos, the pulse that made the floorboards breathe. If you grew up with that sound, you know exactly what I mean. A riff that rolled like a wave, a look that said head, rather let the music talk. And now there's this hush. Fans write about school buses and skate parks, and the first time they heard that drop on a cheap speaker and felt taller. Old gig stubs surface, grainy clips from side stage angles, comments full of thanks and little jokes only a certain generation gets. You can almost see the late nights, the long flights, the lift of a nod between bandmates that means we're on. Behind it all is Sam, steady hands, no fuss, making space for everyone else to be reckless. That's the story most people never spot until it's gone. The quiet craft, the years of holding a room together without saying much. There were highs, sure, the kind you read in headlines, and there were seasons that went dark and messy, the kind you feel more than you want to explain. But today, right here, I just want to slow down and sit with the feeling of it. The way a song can mark time. The way a player can leave without a big speech and still move a million strangers. If this hits you in a way you didn't expect, you're not alone. Share the memory that comes to mind, the track you wore out, the moment you realized the bass was telling its own story. If you want more of these deep dives into the last chapters of the artists who shaped us, stick around, tap subscribe if you feel like it, leave a thought so we can read it together later. Because this one matters. The music didn't just play, it held us. And in a second, we'll trace how a kid with big dreams found his way to global stages, and why the final days felt so silent, even with the volume up. He wasn't born into fame or fortune, you know. Sam Rivers came from Jacksonville, Florida, where the summers felt endless and the music scene was raw and restless. He started out just a quiet kid with a bass that looked too big for him, playing in smoky bars where nobody really cared who was on stage. But he did. He cared more than most. There was something about the way he listened, the way his fingers found rhythm without forcing it. He met Fred Durst and Wes Borland when everything still felt like a long shot. Three guys with big ideas, trying to stitch together hip-hop and metal in a way that made sense to no one but them, and yet somehow it worked. When Limp Bizkit hit, it wasn't just another band, it was a storm. Break Stuff, My Way, Rollin'. Those songs weren't just noise, they were attitude, energy, rebellion for kids who didn't fit anywhere else. Sam stood there, cool and steady, the calm in the middle of the chaos, his bass like a heartbeat under the fury. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The crowd moved because he made them feel grounded while everything else exploded. There's this one clip, early 2000s, big stage, Fred jumping around, lights going mad, and there's Sam, head slightly tilted, that half smile like he knows exactly what he's doing. That's confidence built from the bottom up, not from hype, but from hours in small rooms, calloused fingers, bad cables, and dreams that almost slipped away. The band went global. MTV, sold-out tours, fame chasing them faster than they could breathe. And through all of it, Sam stayed the same, measured, precise, but with this spark in his eyes that said he was still the kid who just wanted to play. Those were the golden years, yeah. But behind every golden light, there's a shadow creeping in. You can't tour forever without it catching up to you. And for Sam, the first cracks didn't show on stage, they showed when the noise stopped, when the crowds went home, and the silence got too heavy. The truth is, nobody really sees the quiet part of success until it starts to hurt. When the lights fade and the applause becomes just another hum in your head, that's when you start hearing the things you'd been drowning out. For Sam Rivers, that silence became louder every year. Limp Bizkit was everywhere, sure, but fame doesn't fix what's happening inside. There were whispers in the crew. He looked tired, withdrawn, sometimes disappearing after shows just to sit alone backstage. The kind of tired that isn't about sleep, but about holding too much inside. The bass still sounded perfect, every beat precise, but his body was starting to betray him. Heavy touring, long nights, fast food, the stress, all piling up. Around 2015, Sam stepped away from the band. Officially, it was about health. Unofficially, it was about survival. Had been struggling with serious liver issues, something had hidden for years behind the music and the smile that never reached his eyes. For fans, it looked like a sudden break. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. But to his friends, it was years of warning signs. The bass player who never complained was finally forced to stop. He checked into hospitals, went through treatments, and at one point faced the reality of a transplant. Imagine that one of the strongest, most grounded people you know, suddenly fragile. He didn't talk about it much. He never liked being the center of attention. Fred Durst would later say in interviews that Sam was the soul of the group, that everything felt off without him. You can hear it in the music too. The band kept going, but something was missing, that steady rhythm, that quiet control. Sam's health journey wasn't linear. There were moments of hope, then setbacks. People who saw him in those years say he was still kind, still funny, still cracking jokes even when his voice was weak. He'd show up at small gigs sometimes, standing at the back, nodding along, refusing to be treated like a ghost of rocks past. But he knew his body had limits. There's this painful irony about musicians. They heal people with sound, but often forget to heal themselves. Sam was one of those souls who poured everything outward. He once said in an old magazine piece, "The best thing about being a bass player is that you're not the loudest, but you keep everyone alive." That line hits differently now. Because that's exactly what he did, kept everyone else alive while he was quietly falling apart. The lifestyle didn't help. The travel, the noise, the constant expectation to be the same person he was in 1999. People change. Bodies change. But fame freezes you in time. For Sam, the hardest part wasn't the illness, it was feeling like he couldn't show weakness. There were friends who tried to reach out. A few say he'd pick up sometimes, talk about wanting to record again, to create something softer, more personal. Other times he wouldn't answer at all. Social media made it worse. Everyone wanted an update. Everyone wanted the comeback story. But not every story has that kind of neat ending. Some just fade, like a bass note lingering in the air after the band stops playing. By the time fans realized how sick he really was, he'd already fought his biggest battles in private. He went through surgery, rehab, recovery. The body survived, but the toll was heavy. The music world barely noticed, too busy chasing the next big sound. But those who knew, they saw him rehearsing again, showing up in the studio, slow but determined. There's a photo from around 2018, him holding his bass with this quiet pride, thinner, older, but the eyes still sharp. That image says more than any headline ever could. It's the look of someone who's seen the edge and decided to come back anyway. When Limp Bizkit started talking about a reunion, Sam was there. Not for the fame, but because the music was family. They got together, rehearsed, joked around like the old days. Fans who saw him live again said he looked lighter, calmer, more at peace. Maybe he knew this was his second chance. Maybe he just wanted to close the loop properly. On stage, you could still hear that unmistakable tone, clean, deep, grounding. The band sounded alive again. Fred smiled more. Wes leaned in closer. It was like the old heartbeat had returned. But even then, something was different. People close to Sam noticed he tired easily. Between songs, he'd rest his hand on the amp a little longer, breathe deeper before the next set. He'd laugh it off, say it's just getting older. But inside, the same quiet struggle was playing out. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was silent, resilience. That's who he was. There's a quote from one of his crew members who said, "Sam never wanted anyone to worry about him. He'd rather you dance." That line feels like a summary of his whole life. He was the rhythm behind chaos, the calm beneath noise, the guy who never took credit but made everything work. And when the body started to slow down, he didn't make a scene. He just kept going until he couldn't. People always talk about the wild side of rock, the parties, the headlines, the chaos, but they forget about the quiet rooms, the long waits in airports, the ache in your back after 2 hours on stage. Sam lived all that. The cost of making music that loud is often silence when the crowd's gone. He knew that silence better than anyone, and maybe that's why his final years feel so haunting now. He was there, alive, smiling, but you could sense the fragility behind it. The same guy who once played to hundreds of thousands was learning how to just breathe and be thankful for another day. In interviews, when asked if he'd change anything, he'd shrug and say, "Nah, it's all part of it, mate." Wouldn't trade it. That's the Australian side of him, straight, unfiltered, humble even in pain. By 2024, whispers started again. Sam wasn't doing great. The band went quiet. The posts stopped. Fans speculated. Some sent love, others didn't know what was happening. Head retreated again, not out of drama, but dignity. There's something deeply human in that, choosing privacy over pity. When people talk about strength, they think of loud gestures. But sometimes strength is just getting up, holding that instrument, and playing one more show. Sam Rivers did that over and over. Even when his body begged him to stop, he didn't want to be remembered for what went wrong. He wanted to be remembered for how it felt when the bass hit just right, when the floor shook and everyone lost themselves for a moment. And maybe that's why, even now, when you listen to those old tracks, you can still feel him there, not as a ghost, but as energy. Pure, simple, steady energy. It's hard to explain, but once you hear it, you know. He wasn't chasing legacy. He was just living rhythm. That's what made him real. That's what made him unforgettable. When Sam finally stepped back into the studio with Limp Bizkit, it wasn't about chasing charts anymore. It was about finishing a story that had been left hanging for nearly a decade. The first few sessions were quiet, almost awkward, the kind of silence that sits heavy between old friends who've seen too much. Fred Durst cracked jokes to cut the tension. Wes Borland tuned endlessly like he was trying to stall the moment. And then Sam picked up his bass, ran his fingers across the strings, and that was it. That sound. Deep, warm, familiar. Like coming home after a long storm. Everyone stopped talking. Because right there, in that instant, they knew the soul of the band was back. It wasn't easy for him, though. People saw the photos, the rehearsals, the laughter, but they didn't see the pain behind it. Every rehearsal took more energy than it used to. He'd pause, close his eyes, take a breath, smile, then keep going as if nothing was wrong. That's the thing about musicians. They measure their lives in bars and beats, not years. Each song was another chance to feel alive. For Sam, it was a kind of therapy. Being on stage again wasn't just about nostalgia. It was about reclaiming something that illness had tried to steal. You could see it in his posture, the slight hunch, the careful grip, but also in his focus. He was there to play, not to talk, not to dwell. In 2022, when Limp Bizkit released Still Sucks, fans noticed something. The album sounded looser, more self-aware, less angry, but still full of attitude. It was the sound of a band growing older, learning to laugh at itself. Sam's bass was right there, anchoring every track with that same gravity that had defined them from the start. But for those who looked closely, there was also something else, a softness, almost like he was saying goodbye in rhythm instead of words. He started avoiding interviews, letting Fred and Wes handle the spotlight. When people asked about him, they'd say, "Sam's taking care of himself." Which was true, but it also meant he was fighting battles most couldn't see. There's this one live video from their 2023 tour. Fans still talk about it. Halfway through My Generation, Sam looks out into the crowd, eyes glossy under the stage lights, and there's this tiny smile, like he's soaking it all in for the last time. He finishes the song, nods, and whispers something to Fred as they walk off stage. Nobody heard what it was, but the look on Fred's face said everything. Backstage, people say he'd sit quietly after shows, towel around his shoulders, eyes closed, listening to the hum of the crowd still echoing outside. That's what he lived for, that shared heartbeat between artist and audience. The fame, the money, the noise, all of it meant nothing compared to that moment. His friends noticed he was more reflective than ever, talking about old times, about music they never got to make, about life being shorter than anyone realizes. He'd say things like, "We're all just holding notes until someone else takes over the song." It sounded poetic, but now, looking back, it feels like foreshadowing. In private, Sam knew his body was running out of time. The transplant had given him a second chance, but it came with limits. The fatigue grew heavier, the pain sharper. Yet he never complained. He'd joke about it, saying, "Guess I've got a few more encores left." It was his way of keeping everyone comfortable. Even when the doctors urged him to rest, he insisted on playing a few more shows. Maybe he needed it more than anyone realized. The music, the movement, the proof that he was still here. There was something deeply symbolic about those final performances. You could feel the gratitude radiating off him, like every note was a thank you, to the band, to the fans, to the sound itself. Sometimes, during soundcheck, he'd drift into little improvisations, soft, jazzy progressions that didn't quite fit Limp Bizkit's chaos, but somehow felt perfect. Wes once said, he was saying goodbye through those riffs. We just didn't know it. As 2024 rolled on, Sam began to withdraw again. The illness was catching up, but he didn't want to make it a headline. He never liked sympathy. He wanted to be remembered playing, not resting. When the band made their last appearance together in early 2025, he looked thinner, paler, but his spirit was untouched. During the final encore, Fred turned toward him, raised a hand, and mouthed, "Love you, brother." Sam grinned, nodded, and played the outro like it was the last heartbeat of the night. The crowd roared, unaware they were witnessing something final. After that show, Sam went quiet. No posts, no appearances, just silence. Friends who reached out said he was peaceful, spending time with family, listening to old vinyl records, had message occasionally, short sentences, warm but distant. The kind that sound casual but carry weight. All good here, mate. Keep the rhythm going. Simple, understated, perfectly him. And that's the thing, Sam Rivers never wanted a grand farewell. His goodbye was in the music, in the spaces between the notes. The bandmates would later admit they felt something shift after that tour, a heaviness they couldn't name. Maybe they knew, deep down, that the sound would never feel quite the same again. He didn't leave with noise. He left with silence, the kind that lingers long after the last chord fades, when the lights are off, and you're still standing there, waiting for one more song. It was early morning when the news broke, quietly at first, then spreading like a low wave across the internet. Sam Rivers, the bassist who had carried the pulse of Limp Bizkit for nearly 3 decades, was gone. No statement at first, just a whisper among fans, disbelief, confusion, then silence. By midday, Fred Durst confirmed it in a few simple lines. No details, no drama, just gratitude and heartbreak. The world felt strangely still. People who hadn't listened to the band in years went back to those old records, pressing play with trembling hands. The sound hit differently now, deeper, heavier, as if every note knew it would be the last. The headlines came fast, but none of them could capture who Sam really was. They spoke about fame, records sold, tours played, but not about the man who always stayed after rehearsals to help the tech crew pack up, or the way he'd check if everyone had eaten before sound check. His goodbye wasn't loud or tragic. It was gentle, almost invisible, the kind that only people who really listened could hear. Fred's message said, "He was the heartbeat. Everything we built had his rhythm." That line echoed everywhere. Fans gathered online, thousands of comments pouring in. Some shared clips from live shows, others old interviews where Sam barely spoke, just smiled. The words that came up most were steady, humble, kind. Musicians from every genre paid tribute bassists, calling him one of the greats, drummers saying they learned to breathe with his timing. Even critics who once dismissed Limp Bizkit's chaos admitted that behind it all was a man who understood balance. The band released a short video the next day. Black screen, white text, one of Sam's bass lines playing softly underneath. No narration, no montage, just sound and silence. It was hauntingly perfect. Fred said later that Sam had always believed music should speak for itself, and it did. That clip became a digital memorial, millions watching, replaying, leaving hearts and broken words in the comments. For those close to him, the loss felt both sudden and inevitable. Head lived quietly, left quietly. The same way he played never too much, never too little. Some say had been at peace in his final days, surrounded by people who mattered, listening to the songs that made him who he was. Maybe he knew his time was short. Maybe that's why his last shows felt so intentional, like every note was a goodbye disguised as rhythm. In the end, Sam Rivers didn't need words. His silence said everything. The music world lost a legend, but his sound, that steady, unshakable heartbeat, keeps playing on. And if you listen closely, somewhere between the noise and the quiet, you can still feel him there, counting us in one last time. In the weeks that followed, something beautiful happened. Instead of fading into the noise of the internet, Sam's name lingered. Young musicians started covering Limp Bizkit songs, stripping them down to just bass and voice, letting the rhythm breathe. Old fans reconnected, trading memories of high school gigs, mosh pits, first cars, heartbreaks, all soundtracked by his groove. Even people who never met him said they felt like they'd lost a friend. That's the kind of impact Sam had, quiet but deep, the sort that doesn't shout to be remembered. Fred Durst said in a later interview, "Well, never replace him. Well, just try to play like Hez still next to us." And maybe that's the truth of it. Sam's gone, but his timing, his soul, his feel, those things don't die. They just move into the hands of the next kid, picking up a bass for the first time, trying to find their own rhythm. Every thump of a low E string, every heartbeat that syncs to a song, is a little reminder of him. His story isn't about fame or tragedy. It's about devotion to music, to his friends, to a craft that outlived him. And as long as people keep listening, Sam Rivers will never really be gone. His final moment wasn't silence. It was resonance, the kind that stays, long after the last note fades.